Welcome to the Nerds and Friends podcast. Today I've got my co-host Caleb Whittle joining me and our very special guest Kevin Stone, who is a skydiving instructor and wingsuit enthusiast and expert. We're very happy to have you on the podcast today, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Of course. Well, the first thing I want to hear about is all the cool stuff you've been up to lately. Tell the listeners about what kind of awesome things you do that most people would never even get the opportunity to dream of doing.
Well, I work in Kansas City as a wingsuit instructor. So
Awesome.
I teach people to skydive. If you have no skydiving experience, obviously we can teach you to skydive to start. But my specialty is actually training people to fly wingsuits, beginner wingsuits, or even intermediate wingsuits.
Oh, wow.
I spend a lot of time working in Kansas City, but this time of year it gets pretty cold. So I'm currently on a vacation. I've traveled down to Tampa, Florida, and I've spent a couple months just doing a lot of, for me, practice jumps basically, but basically they're just fun jumps with my friends here to increase my skill level. We've been doing 2 ways, 3 ways, but we've even gotten some bigger ways. Yesterday or 2 days ago, I did one that was 21 wingsuits together, all building different formations.
Whoa.
It's pretty entertaining. I've gotten to do a couple newbies the last 2 weeks. I trained 2 brand new guys, and I got a guy tomorrow morning at 8 in the morning. I'm training another newbie for his very first ever wingsuit flight.
So for the wingsuits, are you jumping out of a plane with those wingsuits on?
Yeah. So I've got a few wingsuit base jumps as well. I've got like 95 total wingsuit base jumps. That's jumping off of like cliffs and flying down a cliff or whatever.
Wow.
But the training process for flying a wingsuit obviously would start with jumping out of an airplane.
Okay.
So I've got about 2,000 total wingsuit from airplane jumps.
Whoa.
And that's really the training ground for learning to fly a wingsuit. You'd never want to go straight into the base jumping environment because you're going to have a steep learning curve.
Yeah, that sounds pretty dangerous.
So
yeah.
So walk us through like how it's different in a wingsuit versus just normal skydive.
Well, wingsuit changes several things. Like standard skydive, we're fully mobile with our hands, right? I can put my hands in any orientation. I can put my hands above my head, at my side, behind my back. Doesn't make any difference because I'm just wearing my regular clothes or perhaps a jumpsuit. But on a wingsuit skydive, you have a wing that's attaching from your wrist to your hip, then another wing between your knees, and then another from the other wrist to the other hip. So you're effectively skydiving wearing a straitjacket.
Whoa.
So I would say that's the largest difference is mobility.
Okay.
You need to have understanding of how you're able to move in your suit. Of course, with that restricted mobility, you're still able to move in certain ways, but you have to know how to do it. You're not free moving throughout whatever you're doing. The biggest challenge is when we skydive, when we're wingsuiting, we're skydiving, we're wearing a parachute still. I can't land the wingsuit. But when I open a parachute, the controls for my parachute are above my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not able to actually reach my hands above my head when I'm wearing a wingsuit unless you do a very specific orientation where I'm like bringing my elbows together and reaching high to reach the controls. So it gives you some mobility restrictions that are a concern for newbies. And the second biggest difference from a standard skydive is standard skydive, you get out of the airplane and you fall. You're like falling straight down towards the earth. In a wingsuit, I have, like, for instance, in my larger wingsuit, I have the potential to travel about 20 miles with the right wind conditions and the right altitude. Like if I get out at 15,000 feet with a 20-knot tailwind, I could travel pretty far off the drop zone, which, when we skydive, we'll run a jump run. We'll fly the plane directly over our landing area, or maybe just a little bit upwind of our landing area, and we'll make our jump and open up just right there over the landing area. However, in the wingsuit, with your ability to travel, you have to plan out that navigation so that you're maybe drawing a box pattern that ends you where you want to be with your parachute. If you say just jump out and fly in a straight line, you may find yourself 5 miles off the drop zone over some trees where there's no safe landing area for your parachute.
Right.
Well, that's a lot of variables you got to control. That's really impressive.
It's good fun. It's really good fun. It definitely adds new layers to the skydive. It can make it considerably scarier. I've taken several, experienced skydivers for their first wingsuit flights and had them say, "This isn't for me. I'm not interested in this," because
Wow.
it does really change how you're managing the skydive, and it adds a lot more to think about. For instance, on a regular skydive, when your parachute opens, we have a long list of malfunctions, this or that could happen, and your likelihood for a malfunction is about 1 in 1,000 skydives. But for instance, a basic common malfunction would be line twists. If you open your parachute and your shoulders are twisted, you may cause those lines to open in a spun up configuration. In a regular skydive, this is easy to get out of. It's like you're a kid on a swing and you have the chains spun up. You just kind of kick your legs and the chains will unspin. You can like reach up and squeeze them together and you'll come out of that spin. Where on a wingsuit, because you don't have the same mobility, line twists become a much scarier concern, where you may have this malfunction that you've had hundreds of times before as a skydiver, and you were able to relieve relatively easy as a regular skydiver. When you're wingsuiting, this becomes something that you may have to cut away. You may lose your main parachute over a really basic malfunction. So
Whoa.
it's another concern that people have is losing equipment or spending the rest of your afternoon looking for equipment that you've had to release because of a really, really basic malfunction, when otherwise on a regular skydive you would be able to repair or fix.
Yeah, so you always go with 2 parachutes though, right? There's a backup.
Yes. The FAA requires us when we're skydiving to carry 2 parachutes. So if you're base jumping, for instance, jumping off a cliff, you're just going to use 1 parachute. You're not high enough to actually be able to release a parachute and use a second one. We'll just have 1 that's very well maintained and packed. Everything's a lot neater on like a base jumping parachute. But if you're jumping out of a plane or anything that flies, the FAA is governing that realm of things, and they require us to carry 2 parachutes. So we'll carry a main parachute. That's the parachute that we jump over and over and over. I've got a parachute here in my car that I've put 800 or 900 jumps on.
Wow.
And it's still fine. It's still good. I'm going to jump it another 800 times. But the reserve that is associated with that's also in that container, I've only jumped that 3 times. You know what I mean? In the rest of its life, it may jump 3 more times. So that reserve is something that's very neatly and meticulously packed. It's required actually that your reserve be packed by an FAA rigger. So like the FAA gives out a rating that will allow you to do that packing. And there's a lot that goes into that. And we're required to have both of those parachutes with us. So even though you have a malfunction or parachute that may not work, it's a simple matter of like pulling an extra release handle, falling away from that not functioning parachute, and then deploying your secondary.
That still sounds pretty intense.
It's good fun. I've got, like I said, about 2,000 wingsuit skydives. I've had 5 total wingsuit cutaways.
Wow.
So, and all of those were line twists as well. Like I said, the really basic malfunction that I probably could have fixed if I wasn't wearing the suit.
That makes sense. Well, on a totally different tangent, Kevin, I got to ask, have you played Lord of the Rings trading cards since we used to play them in middle school?
I have not actually played the game since middle school, but I still do have my collection.
That's awesome. So do I. They're at my parents' house, but
yeah, me too. Actually,
yeah.
I have a box. I have a little shelf at my grandma's house where she's let me store a bunch of stuff. But I still have my entire collection. And I still have all the rares and holographics sorted in like the special pages where they're organized and everything.
That's awesome. Oh, good times. Good times. Well, what are some other highlights of your career here? Any fun stories that you have, or any cool milestones that you've accomplished in your career that you can tell us about?
I had a recent COVID kind of experience with my last base jumping trip. I was actually in Milan, Italy, at a cliff called Brento. It's one of the beginner base trips. I'm still a novice beginner style base jumper. Total, I don't even have 300 base jumps yet. So, and those are a lot harder to get because you got to do, every base jump is 3 hours of hiking. So takes a lot more. Where a skydive, I can sit in a plane for 10 minutes and then I'm ready to go,
Yeah.
But I was in Italy, in Milan. It was about an hour north of Milan, base jumping in 2020, whenever they started making mandates about who could come in and out of the country. And so I had to cut my trip short. I was going to be there for a whole month. I was only ended up being there for 12 days.
Oh,
I had to fly back a bit early, but it was pretty cool. I was in Italy, and my ticket was to fly out of Milan back home, and I was really concerned that they were going to maybe not allow me back in the country because Milan was one of the hot spots. So me and my buddy changed our tickets to go out to Zurich, and we ended up getting to do like a pretty cool train trip across northern Italy and Switzerland to exit the country from Zurich, so that our passports didn't actually say that we were in Milan.
Oh, nice. That's smart.
Yeah. It was a fun trip. It was a really fun trip. Where I went in Italy is one of their beginner cliffs for wingsuiting. It's supposed to be about a 20-minute hike. Like they'll drive you in a bus up to this spot where they can park the bus, and then you can hike from that point to the exit point and gear up and then make your jump. You land in a cleared area that's right next to a little coffee shop, and you can pack there, and then the bus will start you back over. So you can do 3 or 4 in a day.
That's awesome.
The trouble was I showed up the week after a crazy snow, and there was waist deep snow on the mountain. So they were only able to take us like halfway up the mountain in the bus. We had to hike the rest of the way. So I was hiking 3.5 hours in waist deep snow just to get one
post
jump.
holing and everything. Jeez.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah. It was fun though. I still got 3 jumps while I was there, but
that's impressive considering the time. 3 jumps with that kind of hike. That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, and we could have done more. There was a couple days where it was just like really cold weather, and I was like, I'm not gonna go get soaking wet and be like in freezing cold wind and so on.
Yeah.
I got to try a lot of gelato and pizza though. So
there you go.
There you go.
The important part, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was cool actually. While I was there, I've done a few other trips. The nature of my job is that in the winter it generally becomes not doable. In Kansas City, it's so cold. No one wants to go for a skydive. I work as a tandem skydiver, so most of the money that I make taking people on their first skydive. So anyone who wants to do a very first skydive, you're a novice and know nothing about it, I can get you geared up, give you some basic training in about 15 minutes, and then take you for your skydive. And then I'm the one who's flying the parachute, releasing it if it doesn't work, opening the reserve, and then landing you safely on the ground, or whatever it is that needs to be done.
That's so cool. So cool.
I'll do that for my standard work, but then it becomes not doable in the winter. So I'll try and go find someplace else to work. So I've spent one winter working in Australia. I got to work on the beach in Australia. Did about 400 jumps just jumping on the beach with tandems.
Wow.
I've done a couple in California, a couple in Vegas, and one down here in Florida. So I've gotten to like travel around a bit. And the nature of that is I've gotten to meet a bunch of different people. So while I was in Australia, I got to meet a couple Italians, and I met a couple Italians when I was in Norway. So then when I found myself in Italy, I was able to like text a bunch of my friends that I'd met on the different corners of the world. Like, hey, I'm here in Italy, come hang out.
That's so cool.
So cool. What's been the coolest place you've jumped?
I get that question a lot. I feel like there's 2 answers to it, because there's a cool, like, what would be a cool place for you to go for a skydive, and what's cool for me are maybe different things. For probably the coolest place that I've done tandems, I would say is probably Australia. Jumping onto the beach, it was like a really big bay. Where I was jumping was Gold Coast, Australia, which is kind of like Australia's Las Vegas. It's where they have all their big casinos and hotels and resorts and so on. And so it was like this super huge bay with all this cool skyline, and then we're jumping and landing right on the beach. It was super beautiful. So probably the coolest place I've done tandems would be like someplace with a really cool view. I would say there. My favorite place to go skydiving is just south of LA. It's called Elsinore, California.
Oh, I've heard of Elsinore.
Yeah, it's a pretty big BMX community too. I guess there's a lot of BMX and motocross there. There's several tracks, but it's one of the really famous areas to go skydiving. About 15 minutes away is also Paris Valley, California. Those are 2 of the really big drop zones here in the U.S. But Elsinore is really cool just because they have They have facilities on site. They've got a bunkhouse where you can stay. It's $10 a night to stay the night. They've got showers. They've got a kitchen and like 3 or 4 like refrigerators and stoves where skydivers can like bring some food, store it, and cook dinner at the end of the day, and then stay in a bunkhouse and get a shower in the morning. And then, you can wake up at 8 in the morning, make yourself some breakfast, and then go straight away right to jumping because you're there at the drop zone to start.
Wow.
So
that's so cool.
This drop zone where I'm at here in Florida is a similar style. They don't have a bunkhouse, but they have like 20 of these trailers. They're like these 1970s trailers that can't roll anymore. Their axles are done or whatever, but they still make a nice little bungalow or whatever. And so it's like $40 a night. You can stay in a little bungalow, and they've got a shower house here as well. So I'm waking up in the morning at 8, making some food really quick, and then straight away to the airplane and getting some jumps in. So
that's so cool.
For me, that's what makes a place really cool to jump. I don't really care about the scenery or what's there.
Yeah.
I care about like having a hot shower, a place to eat, and then being able to get straight into the jump and get 8 or 9 per day.
Wow. That's
8 or 9 per day. Wow.
Cool.
Yeah, my record day is a working day. I got 26. That was 24 tandems, 1 wingsuit jump, and 1 student jump.
Wow. That's awesome.
I went skydiving for the first time last year. We have an airport that's just 5 minutes up the street, Ogden Airport in Utah. And I was curious, like how often they jump, like with people, like as tandem. So to hear like up to 26, it's like, that's insane.
Well, it depends. Obviously, that was like a mid-August day when we had one of our instructors sick, so he wasn't there.
Okay.
This last August, though, every single Saturday I did 24.
Wow.
So, and it depends on staff as well.
Right.
Skydive Ogden's a great drop zone. I've jumped there a couple times.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's beautiful. Utah is a really great atmosphere for it as well. There's a lot of mountain people. Utah is probably the number 1 state in the United States for base jumping because there's excellent cliffs. You've got Moab, you've got Notch Peak. There's some great cliffs to jump. There's some big cities. You got Salt Lake and Ogden, both have big cities. That means there's big buildings that people can jump off of. There's antennas everywhere, of course, and then there's a few bridges. Also, the Prine Bridge is in Idaho, but it's I think 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours from Ogden. The Prine Bridge is like the bridge everyone goes to for their very first base jump. The word base is actually an acronym. It stands for building, antenna, span, and earth. So those are your 4 most commonly jumped objects.
I
did not know that. That's
did
really
not
cool.
know that either.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're usually though. I would say most tandem instructors are probably not doing that many jumps in a day. If you were to ask the Ogden instructors, they probably are getting 15 a day or so. Generally, drop zones have more staff. They keep a bigger staff. And Skydive Ogden, I'm sure, has a real big staff because that's a real desirable place to work. A lot of people want to be working there because, like I said, that's where all of the base stuff is. So,
got it. Yeah, I mean, it was so cool, like how quick it was too. Like it was so weird. Like took an hour and a half from our house back to our house. Like it was super quick. And I was like, we just jumped out of a plane. This is insane. Like what? I want to do this more often. This is sweet. Like it was so cool. And one thing I loved about Skydive Ogden is how chill everyone was. Like it wasn't like, okay, like you may die on this. And like, here's the safety video that you watch. And it says 10 times you may die. Like, it was just like, hey, here's the things we go over. All right, cool. Let's go up. And then next thing I knew, I was jumping out of a plane. Like there wasn't time to think of what I'm about to do, which made that experience way better, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, you may find that experience reflected anywhere you go to skydive. That's kind of one of the things that we do. We don't try to give you much time to think about the what ifs of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a tandem instructor, if I get a real hesitant student, someone who's really scared or really nervous, what I'll do is I'll put them in the front. I'll make them go first. so that there's no moment for you to think, oh, I don't want to do this, oh, I don't want to go, or whatever. You know what I mean? When it's time, I'll open the door and get you out before you can tell me you don't want to go, you know? And for those of us who skydive, those of us who do this over and over again, it isn't this intense, horrifying, scary, you know, crazy thing. For us, it's a very relaxing thing. It's if you think about it, you know, in that moment, in that 1 minute that you have in free fall, you have no other concerns. You're right there. You're in the now and the here. This is what I'm doing. And you're enjoying what you're seeing and hearing and feeling. And whatever else you got going on, whatever is your troubles or problems for that day, they kind of just melt away, even just for a minute. And there's something that's really freeing and magical about that. So for us, those of us who do it again and again, really that's what the experience is. And we try and share that and rub that off on everyone that comes through the door, because our goal is for you who comes to do a tandem is to get you to come back and to go again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We want you to go as many times as we can get you to go, you know. And ultimately, if you go through the process of taking an A license and learning to skydive, you're, you know, it's about $2,500, $3,000 to do the process of learning to skydive. Another $3,000 will buy you a parachute, and from there, your jumps are $25 a pop. So you could foreseeably go to the drop zone. You know, you said the drop zone's 10 minutes away from your house. You could go there every week. You could go there and do every Saturday. You could go do 4 jumps. Yeah. And it's an affordable kind of a thing.
How long is the process to get certified to jump solo?
So to learn to skydive, it's going to take you 25 skydives. You got to do 25 jumps. We also have some paperwork we call your A license proficiency card. On that card, it organizes your skydives into an order. So like your first like 2 skydives are just get comfortable with free fall. Then your next like 4 or 5 skydives are, we're just going to get you free falling by yourself. So we'll start out where, you know, we'll have one instructor to your left, one instructor to your right. We're hanging on your harness and we're keeping you stable on your belly. So we're like training wheels, essentially. You can't roll over or flip because we're there. I'm on my belly, he's on his belly. So you have to be on your belly. So we're helping you stabilize for those first 2. On the 3rd, 4th, and 5th one, what we're doing is we're slowly letting go. So we'll have one guy let go on the number 3. And then if everything goes well on number 4, both guys will let go. And then number 5 will both let go again. And we're just floating right next to you. We're letting go and I'm just staying right to your right. If you begin to spin, I'll just put a hand out and stop you. If you roll to your back, I'll just roll you back onto your belly. So we're there to kind of keep you stable on your belly. And you're practicing, you know, not doing turns. And then your next few jumps are turns. And then you do a couple jumps that are flips. And then we start teaching you how to fly out and dock with someone. So it's like a 25 jump process, but each jump has like an objective. We're going to teach you how to do this specific skill, how to fall stable, how to do turns, how to make docks. And then your very last skydive, we call it check dive. We'll go out the door and I'll just chase you, filming you. And you got to show me a front flip, a back flip, a barrel roll, a 360 left, a 360 right, and then come and dock on me. So I'll make you do every single skill that I've taught you all on one jump. And then I'll sign off your paperwork. And then you're licensed to go skydive with anyone else who has also a license. So that 25 jump process could take, for me, it took a whole summer. I was doing one jump a summer because that was what I had the financials for. But if you have good weather and you have the $2,500 up front to just pay for all the jumps, you could complete it in 10 days, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Jeez. Okay.
That's amazing. That is so cool.
Yeah. It can be a lot faster of a process than you might think. And once you start to do some skydives, right, you get those 25 out of the way. Yeah. Then you're going to go back to the drop zone and jump. You'll go and jump, you know, maybe once a week or 2 or 3 times a week. If you do this for a summer, you're going to hit 100 jumps pretty quickly. As soon as you have 100 jumps, you can take a course and qualify yourself as a coach. And then you can start jumping with newbies and you can start accruing free skydives, as it were. Cool. I've got 7,000 skydives at this point, but most of those skydives I didn't pay for because either I was teaching someone how to skydive, I was coaching someone who's new, who needs to learn a new talent, or I was teaching someone to wingsuit, or I was taking someone for a tandem. So there's kind of this process, like once you hit to a certain mark, you'll actually start making back all the money that you spent on your skydives.
Right.
Once I got to that 100 jump mark, I was going to the drop zone with $0. I was just going down there to hang out and see what would happen. And I would end up leaving the drop zone with 8 or 10 skydives because I was having, at my drop zone, if I get a coach jump, that's a free skydive, plus I make $30. And then a fun jump costs me just $20 since I'm on the staff there. So if I do 2 coach jumps, I can buy 3 more fun jumps.
There you go.
It's a great way to look at it for sure.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Some people just look at it as something just fun to do, which, I mean, of course, it's definitely that also, but it can also be this thing that pays for itself. And in my opinion, taking someone on a coach jump is just as fun as me going to do whatever it was that I was going to plan out to do. Because if I take one of my friends out and I teach them how to go and make a dock with someone, it's magical watching them, like, because the idea is, I'm not going to do all the work. I'll fly up to you, but you got to do the last 20%. And when you teach someone and have it all click together and they're like, I did this, I'm the one who did this, like, it's really, really cool to see that in their face.
Super gratifying, I'm sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I will say the thing I struggled with, and the photos taken of me show this, is how to breathe when you are falling. Like, now I know everyone wears helmets when they fall, like full face, because then they can breathe because you don't have wind going in as you're trying to inhale and exhale. That was the hardest thing I struggled with. Jumping, and then finally it clicked, like after like 30 seconds of like I was like, oh, just like breathe out really, really hard and then breathe in a little bit. Like that was the hardest thing to struggle with. It was so weird.
Well, this is actually something I hear quite a lot from people who are coming back for their second tandem. They're like, oh, it was great, but I couldn't breathe. What can you give me any tips, any tricks or whatever? The problem with a tandem is you're on the front of me. I'm behind you. So the idea on a skydive is that we're arching, we're looking straight up. And when you do that, the wind goes across your face. If you're looking into the wind, it's going directly into your face, which makes it very, very, very hard to breathe.
Very.
So the trick is you have to be arching. You have to have your head back. And on a tandem, because I'm right behind you,
it's
that
really
may be difficult.
Yep.
My shoulder may be blocking you from getting your head back as far as would be necessary. So
interesting. Okay.
When you go and do a solo skydive, or if you ever do a solo skydive, you may find that to be a little bit different or a little bit easier because you're able to arch quite a bit more, you're able to get your chin quite a bit further back, and then breathing becomes more easy to do. If you do go do another tandem, the tip that I tell people is, if you find yourself having trouble to breathe, if you just block the wind in front of your nose and mouth for a moment, you can take a breath.
That'd be smart.
It's that negative zone that you create when you do this that makes it so you're actually able to breathe.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to make note of that for sure.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much.
It does make a difference having a full face helmet, though. All of us use those for a reason.
Yeah, I figure that makes life a little easier. Well, Kevin, this has been an awesome podcast. This is really cool. I can't wait to share it with everyone. Thank you so much for your time, man, coming on. Great to reconnect with you on here.
Excellent, Josh. I really appreciate you having me. It was great to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And Caleb, thank you for coming and co-hosting. We appreciate you.
Of course. It was awesome.
My goal is to get to where I can skydive with you sometime in the future, Kevin. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'll be awesome, man. I'll definitely let you know when I'm in California next. We'll definitely have to link up for that.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, thank you so much.
Hey, and if either of you guys are ever in the Kansas City area, look us up. It's Falcon Skydiving. We're just 15 minutes outside of downtown KC.
Oh, perfect. Cool. Falcon Skydiving. I'll make sure we put a link in the description for our viewers.
Excellent. That'll be great.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kevin. I'm going to go ahead and click the end recording.